From the moment I married into the Malhotra family, I knew love would be conditional. My mother-in-law, Kamla Malhotra, never hid her disappointment. Her eyes swept over me like I was an item bought by mistake, acceptable, but never cherished. On our wedding night, while the house buzzed with celebration, she leaned close to my ear and whispered the words that would haunt me for years. "Remember one thing, Anya. This family needs a son." I laughed then, nervously, thinking it was an outdated joke. I didn't understand yet that for Kamla, it was a command. My husband, Rohan, stood beside her like a shadow present, silent, obedient. Whenever his mother spoke, he lowered his eyes. Whenever I tried to speak, he asked me to be patient. "She's old-fashioned," he'd say. "She'll change." She never did. When I became pregnant, the house changed, but not in the way I imagined. Kamla monitored every step I took, every bite of food I ate, every doctor I visited. She insisted on private appointments, selected the hospital herself, and dismissed my questions with a sharp glare. "No unnecessary tests," she snapped. "God decides the child's fate." But I noticed how she prayed longer, harder. How she brought priests home. How she fasted every Monday and Thursday, not for my health, but for a boy growing inside me. The day I went into labor, the pain tore through me like fire. The hospital lights blurred above me as nurses rushed around. Kamla arrived before Rohan did. She took control instantly, flashing authority and money with equal ease. I remember screaming, I remember crying, and then darkness. When I woke up, my body felt hollow, my arms were empty. "Where's my baby?" I whispered, panic clawing at my throat. A nurse smiled politely. "The baby is fine, rest now." Hours passed. Then Kamla entered the room, her face stiff, unreadable. Rohan followed behind her, not meeting my eyes. "She's a girl," Kamla said flatly. The word girl fell like a verdict. I felt tears stream down my face, not because my child was a daughter, but because I knew what that meant in this family. I reached out desperately. "Please let me see her." Kamla hesitated, then nodded once. They placed the baby in my arms for just a moment. She was wrapped tightly, her face barely visible. I remember the warmth, the tiny cry, the way my heart leapt like it finally understood its purpose. And then she was gone, back at home. Everything changed overnight. The sweets disappeared, the congratulations stopped. Kamla avoided my room, the relatives whispered. Rohan grew distant, sleeping on the edge of the bed like a stranger. Kamla's words became sharp knives. "A woman who can't give a son has no value. Our family name ends with you. Don't get too attached. Girls are temporary." I tried to protect my baby. I tried to argue, to plead, to remind them she was flesh of my flesh. But I was weak, bleeding, exhausted, and alone. One night, Kamla stood in my doorway with my suitcase already packed. "This marriage was a mistake," she said coldly. "Take your useless emotions and leave. Where is my daughter?" I cried. "Let me take my baby." Kamla's eyes hardened. "The child will be raised properly. You are not fit." Rohan said nothing. I was pushed out of the house before sunrise, barefoot, broken, my womb aching for a child I wasn't allowed to hold. As the gates slammed shut behind me, I felt something tear inside my chest, something deeper than betrayal. I didn't know it then, but the baby they told me was a girl was never a girl at all. And the lie they buried that night would one day rise and burn everything they built. I survived, but I did not live. The years after I was thrown out passed like a long, colorless tunnel. I moved from relative to relative, then to a rented room that smelled of damp walls and loneliness. People told me to be grateful I was still young, that I could start again, that God had saved me from a cruel family. They didn't understand. A mother doesn't lose a child and simply start again. Every night I woke up hearing a baby cry that wasn't there. I dreamed of tiny fingers curling around mine, of a warmth I'd only held once. I kept replaying that moment in the hospital, how tightly the baby had been wrapped, how quickly she had been taken away. Something about it never felt right, but pain has a way of silencing doubt, until fate decided I had suffered enough. It happened 5 years later on a crowded bus. A woman collapsed near me, clutching her chest. I helped her down and stayed until an ambulance arrived. At the hospital, while waiting to give my statement, I noticed her staring at me strangely. You are Anya Malhotra's wife, aren't you?" she asked. Malhotra, the name hit like a slap. I nodded stiffly. I was. Her face drained of color. She hesitated, then whispered, "I worked at Shanty Memorial Hospital, in the maternity ward." My heart began to pound. She kept glancing around, terrified someone might hear us. "I shouldn't say this," she murmured. "I quit after that day, after what they made us do." "What day?" My voice shook. "The day your baby was born." The walls seemed to tilt. "What do you mean?" She swallowed hard. "Your baby wasn't a girl." The world stopped breathing. I saw the records myself. She continued, tears filling her eyes. "You gave birth to a healthy baby boy." I grabbed her arm, my nails digging into her skin. "That's impossible. They told me they lied," she said, her voice breaking. "Your mother-in-law paid the head nurse. There was another woman in labor that night, your husband's mistress. She had a boy, too." My ears rang. "What are you saying? They switched the babies," she whispered. "Your son was taken away. The other woman's child was registered as yours." I staggered back, nausea rolling through me. Memories flooded in. Kamla arriving before Rohan, the heavy blankets, the rushed moment in my arms. All the pieces I'd forced myself to forget suddenly fit together. "Where is my son?" I cried. The nurse shook her head. "I don't know. After that night, I refused to be part of it. I only know your baby was alive when they took him." Alive. That single word kept me standing. I didn't sleep for days. I hunted for answers like a woman possessed. I returned to the hospital, demanded records, argued with clerks who pretended not to know me. Files were missing. Names had been altered, but lies always leave fingerprints. I found one. A discharge slip with my name, but a different blood type listed for the baby. Proof. Then I searched for Rohan's mistress. It wasn't hard. She lived openly now, wearing the life that should have been mine. And beside her, in photographs, was a little boy with Rohan's eyes. My hands trembled as I counted the years. 5, the same age my son would be. The truth crashed over me like a wave of fire and grief. They hadn't just thrown me away, they had stolen my child, erased my motherhood, and built their happiness on my bones. But something else rose inside me too, resolve. I wiped my tears and stared at my reflection. The woman looking back was no longer broken. She was a mother who had been robbed, and I made myself a promise. They thought the lie was buried. They were wrong. Revenge didn't come to me like rage. It came like clarity. For weeks after the truth surfaced, I did nothing reckless. I didn't confront Rohan. I didn't storm Kamla's house screaming for justice. Pain had already taught me one brutal lesson: impulse was a luxury I couldn't afford. If they had stolen my son once, I would not give them the chance to hurt him again. I started by rebuilding myself from the ground up. I took a better job, worked late nights, saved every spare rupee. I found a lawyer not to file a case yet, but to understand my rights. I met quietly with hospital staff who had since retired, with cleaners, record clerks, anyone who might remember that night. Some refused to speak. Others spoke in fragments, fear still clinging to their voices, but fragments were enough. Each statement, each altered document, each unexplained gap became a thread. Slowly, carefully, I wove them into proof. And then there was my son. I saw him first from a distance, outside a private school. He wore a blue uniform, his bag hanging crookedly from one shoulder. He laughed exactly the way I imagined, wide, unrestrained, innocent. When the bell rang, he ran straight into Kamla's arms. My knees nearly gave out. She doted on him, kissed his forehead, called him my heir, with pride shining in her eyes. Watching them was like swallowing glass, but I stayed hidden. Love had blinded me once. I wouldn't let it ruin me again. Rohan looked older, weaker. The mistress, now his wife, wore expensive clothes and hollow smiles. Their perfect family was built on stolen blood, and I was about to remind them of that. I didn't announce my return. I let it whisper through the cracks. A legal notice arrived, first polite, precise, impossible to ignore. Then hospital authorities received anonymous complaints. An old nurse was called in for questioning. The past began knocking at doors Kamla thought were sealed forever. She came to see me 2 days later. Standing outside my modest apartment, Kamla Malhotra looked smaller than I remembered. Her voice trembled despite her sharp words. "What game are you playing?" she hissed. I met her gaze calmly, "The one you taught me." Her face drained of color. "You have no proof." I smiled, "Not yet." Fear flickered across her eyes. For the first time, she saw me not as a discarded daughter-in-law, but as a threat. Rohan came next. He didn't shout. He didn't beg. He just stared at me like he was seeing a ghost. "You knew," I said softly. "Didn't you?" His silence was answer enough. "They told me it was best for everyone," he whispered. "Mother said you'd move on. She said the child would have a better life. And what about me?" I asked. "What about my son's right to know his mother?" He broke then, sobbing like the weak man he had always been. But pity had dried up inside me long ago. The final blow came quietly. DNA tests were ordered under court supervision. Media whispers started spreading. The word baby swap has a way of igniting public outrage like wildfire. Kamla stopped sleeping, the mistress stopped smiling, Rohan stopped pretending, and my son, my real son, began asking questions. That night, I stood by my window, watching the city lights glow like 1,000 eyes. I wasn't destroying them. I was letting the truth do what it always does. And this time, they couldn't take my child away in the dark. Not anymore. The truth didn't explode. It unfolded, slowly, publicly, mercilessly. The court hearings stretched over months, each date peeling another layer off the lies Kamla Malhotra had wrapped herself in for years. Hospital records resurfaced, retired nurses testified, the DNA report cold, scientific, undeniable. It confirmed what my heart had known all along. The boy they called their heir was mine. When the judge read the verdict, Kamla collapsed into her chair, her hands shaking, her lips moving in silent prayers that no longer mattered. Rohan sat frozen, staring at the floor like a man already buried. His wife, the woman who had worn my stolen life like jewelry, walked out of the courtroom without looking back. And my son, he stood in the hallway, clutching his school bag, eyes wide with confusion and fear. I knelt in front of him, my knees trembling. "I'm Anya," I said gently. "I'm your mother." He didn't run to me. He didn't cry. He studied my face carefully, like he was searching for something familiar he couldn't name. Then slowly, he reached out and touched my cheek. "You look like me," he whispered. I broke. The first night he stayed with me, he woke up crying. I held him the way I'd waited years to, rocking him until his breathing steadied. I didn't tell him bedtime stories about heroes and villains. I told him the truth, softened, careful, wrapped in love, that he was wanted, that he was loved, that none of this was his fault. Kamla was sentenced, not to prison, but to something worse for her, disgrace. Her social circle turned cold. Her temple visits became lonely. The same women who once praised her now whispered behind her back. Rohan lost more than his family name. He lost his son's trust. He came to see us once, standing at the door like a stranger. My son hid behind me, gripping my hand tightly. "I'm sorry," Rohan said, his voice hollow. I nodded. "I know. Forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation. Sometimes it means choosing peace over poison." Years passed. My son grew taller, stronger, brighter. He learned the truth of his story not with bitterness, but with strength. We built new traditions: Sunday breakfasts, late, night talks, laughter that healed wounds I thought would never close. One evening, as we watched the sunset from our balcony, he leaned against my shoulder. "They thought they could erase you," he said quietly. "They were wrong." I kissed his hair, breathing him in like a miracle. Kamla lives alone now, surrounded by memories that don't speak back. The house she once ruled echoes with silence. Her obsession with a baby boy cost her the only thing that ever mattered: family. As for me, I didn't win by taking revenge. I won by reclaiming my life. I was cast out as a woman who failed to give a son. I returned as a mother who found hers, and no one, not lies, not cruelty, not bloodless traditions, could ever take him from me again. Baby Broken sparkled